Alright, so this is the final video, I promise. And before I get into where we left off on the last video, oh man, I'm tired. I want to talk about say you're installing this on a Mac or you're on a Linux distribution, right, on your local machine. For me, it's Windows, but it doesn't matter. You can still do the same. All these steps. The only difference is going to be the file structure is going to be different. Okay, it's going to look different. But I want to tell you that I installed, and I don't know if I said this in the other videos, but I installed Homestead and Laravel, and I got all this running by watching a guy do it on a Mac machine. So it's all the same process. Okay, so don't think you're going to be super confused if you're on a Mac watching this guide and you're not going to be able to understand it. You're going to. It's fine. Okay. All right, and so going back, we're going to carry on. We left off with this modifying the Etsy host file, and you added, right? Remember, you added this line to that file. You saved it. You're done, right? And so now we can actually launch the Vagrant box. We've gotten to a point where we can actually boot it up, and I'll show you what that looks like. So you have to be within the Homestead directory, okay? And what you're going to do is you're just going to want to type, well, let me see, hold on. Yeah, so you're going to type Vagrant up. And I'm going to pause the video here because it might take you a lot longer it might take your VM a lot longer to boot up. So I'm going to pause the video for a second. Okay, so your virtual machine should have gone through pretty much these same steps. I can't remember if it was exactly the same because I've already booted up my VM and shut it down a couple of times, but let's run through this real quick. If you might have to scroll up if you had your window open, if it was really small. I expanded mine so I didn't have to scroll up, but notice how this is what I was talking about. See this 8000 here? All forwarding HTTP requests are going to go through this 8000 port. That's the way Homestead is set up, right? So anything with HTTPS, it's going to go through 44300. SQL, which is this port here, gets routed in Homestead to there. So that's why whenever you're actually on you're in Chrome on your local machine and you want to go to your website or to view the code, any changes that you made to your website, you go to the moviedb.app and you use port 8000. Okay, and it just forwards that HTTP request to port 8000 and it works. That's what all that is about. I know that it was kind of confusing at first, but that's all it is, really. So you just have to add 8000 to it. You're good to go. The next thing is I wanted to talk about this line here. As you can see, this is the file replication happening in this file here. Remember we talked about the Homestead YAML? That was how we synchronized our folders. This is what this is saying as you boot up the VM. So it's saying any changes made to any one of these directories is going to replicate. So if you make a change in the MovieDB code, it's going to replicate within the code directory on the VM. So that's that. Now your virtual machine's up. Now we have the next step. Okay, so now that we have the VM up and running, let's actually get into the VM like I was in the very first video where I was just talking about Homestead. So it's going to be Vagrant SSH. This is going to take a couple of seconds. If you're running it for the first time, it might be a little longer, but for me, that was like 5 seconds. So now, as you can see, we're in the Vagrant Homestead Ubuntu virtual machine, which is acting as our web server. Remember that. So now if I list, you can see that code directory. So change directory code. Then here you have the movie. Well, actually, you're not going to have this. So you're going to be in this code directory. There's not going to be anything in there. And this is where we're actually going to set up the Laravel installation. So that was the next step. I kind of got ahead of myself. So just ignore this directory for now. This is where we're going to actually install Laravel. So Ubuntu, or that Homestead virtual box, Vagrant virtual box, comes pre-installed with Composer. You don't need to install it. So all you have to do is run this command. So it's going to be copy. I promise we're almost done. We're almost done. And you're just going to paste it. You're going to run it in here. Okay, and it's going to run through the installation. This might take a little bit. This took me maybe like a couple of minutes. I have a pretty fast internet connection. And then once that's done, then we can actually create a new Laravel project, which is, I mean, it's like, once I got to this point, I was like so happy because, I mean, it took so long just to get to this one point. But you're going to type in Laravel new, and instead of blog here, okay, you're going to type in Laravel, and then it's going to be new, okay, you're going to type in movie DB. And so what's that? Once you execute that command, it's going to run through and set up your basically your framework file structure within that movie DB directory. And so once this command's done, you're basically going to say ls, and now you're going to have the movie database, right? You're going to have the movie DB directory. We'll change directory into that. And as you can see, when you do an ls, these are all the Laravel files that were set up whenever you ran the Laravel new movie DB command. And that's it, right? So our server is set up, our web server, our virtual web server is set up to look just like our actual server that's going to have our finished product. And yeah, that was the whole point of this. So, and then like I said before in the first video, right, we're in projects, we do movie DB, and look. So whenever you created that folder, because these two directories were synced up, whenever you created this using the Laravel new command, it made that folder within the project's movie DB code. And if you navigate to that folder or that directory, when I say folder directory, I mean the same thing, okay? Change it up all the time. I don't know why I do that. But whenever you navigate to that directory, it's going to have all the same files, just like I showed you in the first video. And so the next step would be to fire up the IDE that you want to use, all right? And then you're going to have to, so this is now my local machine, and you're going to fire up your IDE, and you're going to basically point to that project's movie DB code, movie DB directory, and then you'll have your Laravel file structure set up here, all nice and clean and neat. And then you can play around and do things like I was doing before. Remember, I changed this. So we changed this. Right now it's 10. I guess if we go back to here, it's 10, right? And, oh, well, I changed it. That's funny. So, right, see how it's... I didn't even save it. That's kind of crazy. But, right, we can put it back to 5 the way it was, save it, and then start seeing your changes. So, like I said before, to get to this virtual hosted website, you're going to have to type in moviedb.app on port 8000, just like that. And I don't know how many more or how much longer I have in this video. I guess I won't talk about that. We can talk about that on Saturday. We can start actually going over how this framework actually does its thing. It's kind of crazy. Let me just show you. I set up this movie page within this route here. I set up that route, so whenever anybody goes to the movies web page, it returns the view under pages, movies played, and within that I just have this H1, and I can show you what it would look like if you set up another view. And I said here are all the movies in the database. Obviously there's no movies that I haven't posted yet, and that's what the code is here. So I guess after this, I haven't done this yet. I'm probably going to work on that tomorrow. But after this is going to be the actually connecting to the database and making sure that we're not setting up a brand new one if we don't want to, right? We might. I think we talked about redoing the whole database and using the Eloquent that comes with the Laravel structure, but I don't know what we're doing yet. So I at least want to make this Laravel, write this working environment, point to the database that we have set up already so that we can do basic queues and I can see how everything works. So that's what I plan to do tomorrow. I don't think I'm going to do a video on that. We can just talk about that on Saturday. So hopefully this helped you understand what Homestead was, or what Homestead is, okay? And then hopefully the installation wasn't as bad as you thought it was. So I guess I'll see y'all Saturday.